Hey, what's up, everybody? Navid Muasses here. And for today's interview, I'm very excited to be joined by Dan Norris, all the way from Australia. Dan is an Amazon bestselling author of The 7-Day Startup and a serial entrepreneur. And he was voted Australia's top small business blogger in 2013. And in the same year, he founded WP Curve, a WordPress support company that he grew to 45 team members in 7 countries, thousands of customers, and a $1 million Australian dollar annual run rate in less than 2 years. So that's just fantastic. And then relied solely on content marketing and word of mouth, and used the techniques documented in his new book, Content Machine. And that's what we are here to talk more about today. So warm welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to kind of dive right in a little bit, because I read, I got a copy of your book, and I read there a little bit your story, and like the reason how you had a lot of ups and downs in your journey, and then finally decided that content marketing was the way to go. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you came about this, and then use that to grow WP Curve so successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I just sort of noticed with my last business, which was an agency, that that business really wasn't working. There wasn't really anything about it that I liked, except that I had a blog and that I liked putting content on the blog. And that was like the only thing about that business that I liked. So I decided to end up selling that business and starting another one. But this time I wanted to make sure that I really focused on the content. So I had to start from scratch. I sold that blog. It had about 150 posts on it. I got rid of all of my social media accounts. Started a fresh Facebook account, fresh Twitter account. This is in 2012. And so literally had to start everything from scratch, started a new blog, and just tried to create lots and lots of content and start to build up this audience and build up a bit of a machine for marketing a business. The content, gradually I learned how to do it well. I learned what people like. It took me a long time to work that out. I think about 700 blog posts, including the ones I've written before in my old business. But eventually I sort of figured out how to do it well. And for a while, my business wasn't very good and that wasn't working out. It was pretty disastrous, but the content started going well. And as soon as I launched a business that, was something that people wanted, that content really kicked in, and things have just gone like pretty nuts since.
Yeah, and I mean your tagline for your book is basically use content marketing to build a 7-figure business with zero advertising, and that's a lot of buzz right now, that you need advertising to Facebook ads and all this. But I think you mentioned that you spent around $180 or something like that on ads, and the rest is just content marketing and word of mouth. So what was the key there to like getting the word out there? Like you had obviously your own blog on WP Curve now, but what else? You have a personal blog, but how did you market it from the very, very beginning?
Well, the key is having a good business, I think, and having good content and having a good link between the two. And that's in my book. I talk about that because I could write a book that helps people sort of get more traction on their content. But what if the content's not very good? Or what if their business that they're marketing is not very good? Or what if the content they're putting out is absolutely no relation to the business and is just building a totally irrelevant audience? Then it's not really going to help people at all. So I think like there's a big difference. In the blog, I make a distinction between bloggers and content marketers. And I think if you're thinking of yourself as a blogger, who's someone who's going out there and creating content, that's your job. It's not a very valuable skill. Bloggers don't make any money. They don't have very good businesses. The businesses that are making money from content marketing are the people that see content marketing as, or see blogging as their publishing platform. Like big companies are doing this. Red Bull are doing it. DC are doing it. Big companies are using content as a way to get the attention of people and build trust with people. And it's really the same thing as blogging, and you can do it on a very, very small scale. But the key lesson is that the blog isn't the business. The business is something else that sits behind that. And the content you're putting out there needs to get people's attention. It needs to be for a community that's going to help your business. But the business has to be solid. Otherwise, you're going to be valued as a blogger and not valued as an entrepreneur, which is So this book, I really want to inspire content marketers to become entrepreneurs, because I think there's a lot more value in that skill. I think it's going to be one of the most valuable skills people can build in the future, because it's a creative skill, and it's very, very difficult to outsource. Hardly anyone knows anything about it, and a lot of the companies want to get into content. So my goal with the book is to get people from thinking of themselves as a blogger through to thinking of themselves as an entrepreneurial content marketer.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, there's also a lot of buzz out there, about a lot of people starting podcasts and blogs, and that's the same idea kind of. They're not making that much money because they're publishing content without reason to drive business or to start something. They're starting another show about interviewing entrepreneurs or whatever. I was in the same boat a little bit. Then I figured out my niche and how to market and how to reach my audience. Completely different. You founded a startup. Even if you're selling online courses or something like that, it's the same idea. You can't just be in the blogosphere or whatever, because you're there. Simply, you're right. They're not making that much money if they're not treating it as a business and as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to have a go at people who are creating content and not making money, because I was definitely in that position, and sometimes it does take time. It does. It's like a lot of people will say, you can't just create a blog and then hope that you can monetize it later. Well, yes, you can. John Numis did that, and he's got a multi-million-dollar business that started without any idea about how he was going to monetize it. So you can do it. I did it as well. It's exactly what I did. Created a shitload of content, and I wasn't making any money doing that content, but eventually I turned into a business. But I think the mentality needs to be blogging itself, or like monetizing by putting ads on your site, or even selling content or info products. For some reason, like, bloggers think that that's the only way they can make money, or having a membership. These are not the only ways you can make money. In fact, they're not very good ways to make money. Most of the big companies don't make money from selling information. In fact, a lot of the big companies are buying other companies that put out information. Like I was at a conference yesterday, a company called Surf Stitch that sells online surf-related products. They've just bought Stab magazine, which is a surfing magazine, and Magic Seaweed, which is a surf forecasting site, because they want to do content marketing, and they value it so highly that they're buying other companies that all these other companies do is produce content. And the other companies sell because producing content is not a very good business model, but it's a very, very effective marketing method. So yeah, I think it's really powerful. I want to get people to think about this as like a way that companies are marketing now and standing out that they don't even understand. This conference I was at yesterday, they had the global marketing manager, or I don't know what his role was actually, with GE. I think it's like global digital marketing manager or something. And he didn't know, like he basically said, like, we try everything. He's on Periscope. He's got like drones flying on Periscope to see if that gets traction. They put out moon boots to celebrate the commemoration of the 45th anniversary of the moonwalk. They're doing all kinds of crazy shit that they don't know if it's going to work, because no one really knows how to do content marketing well yet. And so that's what I want people to get to, is like, realize that this is like, no one knows how to do this. It's a very, very, very valuable skill, and it's worth investing some time in thinking about how to do it better, and not just having a blog and trying to think about how to make money from the blog itself.
Yeah, sure. And I just wanted to cover maybe, when you're creating this content, it seems like a lot of people, they're making quite a lot of mistakes. So I could avoid that, they want to drive more people to their business. It's a long-term game, but, how can they make sure that the content they're creating have this long-term viability, stands the test of time and so on?
Well, nothing really stands the test of time. So I think that benchmark is probably not a good one to set. I mean, whatever I'm doing now might be totally irrelevant next year. Like, I know that, and I need to stay on top of how to be relevant. And people are doing this all the time. The people who are just stuck doing the old way of doing things and just completely ignoring these new technologies that are coming out are going to miss the ball on some of this stuff, because it's changing so much. But in terms of avoiding common mistakes, I think the biggest mistake people make is they ask the wrong questions. And I think they, like, a common question that I'll get asked would be something like, how do I get more traction on my content? But what if that content is really not that good to start with? Maybe it's not getting that much traction because it's not that good, because it's not that useful to people, because it's not that different from anything else that's out there. And and you haven't been able to build an audience around your content because you're putting something out there that doesn't need to be out there. Or maybe you put all this content out there and you've got a crappy business that isn't designed to grow, and you're trying to monetize this blog the same way everyone else is, and putting up a few ads or trying to sell a little ebook. Maybe there's like fundamental problems. 9 times out of 10, there's fundamental problems that need to be resolved that aren't the answer to the question you're asking. So I think that's the mistake people make. They get way too far ahead of themselves and don't take a step back and think like, how do I structure a high growth business? How do I build a content strategy that has me putting content out there that I'm good at putting out there, that my audience loves, and that's different to everything else that's out there, and it's actually needed. Having a vision for what's needed in the world is really important. Like, people who do this well do that. That's what they do. They say, I want more information to be out there on this topic. There's not enough good stuff out there. I'm going to put it out there. So that's what good content marketers do. If you've skipped all of that stuff and you've got onto, I've got a blog that's the same as everyone else's, and I want to get more tweets on my content, then it's not going to work. You've missed the point. Yeah, and you talk about this in your book, like in terms of creating high quality content. Maybe you can get into a few things. How someone, they have a blog or what they want to market their business. How can they create this high quality content and make sure they differentiate themselves from all the other blogs or podcasts or whatever they are doing online? Yeah, well, I mean, in the book, I sort of, what I believe generally is that there's no such thing as a blueprint for anything. Mm-hmm. So I can't tell you what high quality content is. I can tell you what my experience is and what I've learnt from content I've put out there. Sure. And I'll get to that. I can tell you 50 different things to try with your audience. But I can't tell you what's going to work. And only your audience can tell you that. And they won't tell you, they'll show you when they share your content. Not when they like it, not when they view it. So I think that's one way to think about it. In terms of what's worked for me, definitely the highly actionable stuff has worked for me. If you're writing a post that says 10 quick tips on hiring guest writers, that's not going to work as well as, here is exactly how we hire guest writers. Here's the exact process we use. You can download the Google Doc for our content writing guidelines, so you can use that process for yourself. And if you've got any questions, let us know in the comments. You're actually helping people do something. It's useful. It's actually useful. It's actionable. People use this phrase actionable way too much. Like, if people aren't taking action on it, they're not actually using it, then it's not actionable. So don't say it's actionable. But that's worked for us, being truly useful, and being really transparent has worked for us, because content marketing is a trust building exercise ultimately. And transparency is a really good way to build trust. You can do it in everything you do. I do it in all of our content. The extreme version is the income reports. But you can be transparent in other ways. I do it when I talk. I do it on podcasts. I share as much as I can that's going to help people. People love stories. I tell my story all the time. And that has worked really well for me. So the other thing that's worked really well for me is being a little bit contrarian. That's a good way to get people's attention. And if I've got a thought on something that is the opposite of what other people think, then I'm not afraid to put it out there, because I know it's going to get attention and it will end up being good content. So those are some of the things that have worked for me. And you can try a million things and maybe they won't work for you. Like, it also has a lot to do with how advanced your industry is. Like, if you're in the online marketing world, which is so far advanced with this stuff that it's really, really hard to stand out. If you put out an income report each month, no one's going to give a shit, because it's been done. Like, it's been happening for years. It's not new. If you do that in an industry where no one even knows what content marketing is, no one has blogs, businesses are still paying yellow pages to advertise in, then it's going to be explosive. So you need to think about what industry you're in and what are some of the things you can try. And in the book, I have stories. A whole quarter of the book talks about differentiation. It has stories from a bunch of people, ranging from really basic content marketing strategies that will work in really early industries that haven't grasped this at all yet, through to more extreme versions that can work. I mean, content marketing goes as far as that Billy, what's the guy's name? The Robbie Madison on the motorbike in Tahiti riding. Did you see that? Yeah, like 2 days ago, the guy on the motorbike riding the wave. Like, that's fucking insane. But that's like extreme content marketing on steroids that Red Bull sort of pioneered. That's what they have to do to stand out in their industry. I mean, thank God we're not in the energy drink game, but anything between writing basic blog posts and surfing waves in Tahiti is content marketing. Depending on where your industry is, you're going to have to go further up that scale to outpace your competitors.
Yeah, and I actually, it's interesting you mentioned about transparency, because that's the way I used to stand out. I'm blogging for a while, and then I started, as I started traveling more, now living in Cancun, I started to, publish, more like not like a clone of John Lee Dumas or Pat Flynn's income reports, but I did like an epic business and lifestyle review. So people could really see the photos, they could see the stories, they could see my goals for the next quarter. And that worked extremely well with my audience, and a lot of people connected with it. So that's just how you can implement that.
Like if people are listening to this, all I will say to them is that's good that it worked for you, and it's good you found something that works for you, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for other people. So I think, like in your case, if you've gotten to the point where you've actually created some stuff that's worked for you, people are sharing it, that prove to you that they care about it by messaging you and telling you that like this is what they want, then you're past where most people are with content marketing and with blogging. Like most people don't even get to that point. So I want people to get to that point. I don't want them to completely skip that point and try to promote this content that doesn't need to exist. I want them to get to the point where they know what works really well with their audience. And it sounds like you've gotten to that point. But I can't emphasize that enough. Like most people don't get there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I just wanted to cover a little bit how someone, they have maybe a small audience and they're struggling to get maybe great ideas or something like that. How do you personally then come up with your ideas for the content you're creating for your personal blog and maybe the WP Curve? Now you have guest writers and so on there. I saw that, but in the early stages, how do you come up with great ideas?
Well, I'll give you the true answer, and I'll give you the answer that everyone wants to hear, because the answer that everyone wants to hear is that I've got a framework that gives you 20 options to come up with loads and loads of ideas for creating content, and it's got sources on there like using BuzzSumo or Google Keyword Tool, Eventbrite, a whole bunch of different places you can get ideas for content. And then I've got another framework. All these frameworks are for free in the book, by the way, contentmachine.com. And you don't even need to get the book; you just get them from the site. They're completely free, no email opt-in. There's another framework that takes all those ideas and then explodes them into 11 blog post ideas for each one. So if you get one idea from each of those sources, then that's 20, and then you multiply that by potentially 11, and you've got hundreds of content ideas. So that's the idea, that's the answer that everyone wants, because that makes it as easy as possible. But the real answer is once you've got your first few ideas, like this might be something you do at the start, or it might be something you do when you get in a rut. But the reality is, if you've got a vision for your content, like what sort of content needs to be out there, and you've got an audience that is engaged with you, that telling you what they want, what problems they have, what problems they want solved, then coming up with content ideas is not difficult. Like you get content ideas all the time because your audience is telling you what to create, and you've got a vision for what you want out there that informs your strategy of what you want to produce. So if you've got those two things in place, if you're creating content people care about, you'll get that feedback from the audience. If you've got a vision that says, this is what I want to be out there that isn't out there already, then you will never struggle to find ideas for content. So I'll give you an example. With our craft beer business, Black Hops Brewing, when we wanted to start a brewery, I got on Google to have a look, how do we do decals and labels? Where do we get equipment? How much is this going to cost? Where do we open? Like all of this stuff I wanted to get from Google. I couldn't get it because the only people blogging about beer are beer bloggers, and they're blogging about what beer tastes like. The breweries, the people who are starting up, are not creating any content about this stuff. So we have a vision that in 5 years' time, when someone goes to open a brewery, they can go to Google and they can get a whole bunch of information that is amazing, and they'll find the best site in the world for learning about starting a brewery from real people who are going through it, who went through it, and that site will be our site. And so we don't struggle to come up with content ideas. We've got a podcast that records all of our calls. We talk about the equipment, the investors, how we're getting money, where we're opening, really transparent stuff like that, because this is the content we want out there. We don't have to go to Google and see what people are searching for. Like we've got a vision for that content. The audience is now starting to engage with it. They're telling us what they want to hear from us on, and it's this natural momentum that happens when you strike that right. And a lot of the stories I tell in the book are these kinds of things. Some on a much bigger scale than that. Like we're just a tiny company with 10 blog posts. But it's the same thing. Red Bull want this insane shit out in the world that is not out there already, and they want Red Bull to be plastered all over it, because they want to be associated with all of this extreme shit that's going on, and that's their vision. So they don't go into Google and see what people are searching for to come up with a content idea. Like that, they know what kind of stuff they want to put out there, and you know their audience probably tells them, and they probably sit around with crazy fuckers like Robbie Madison and work out like what they're going to do to put this content out in the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and for people watching or tuning into this, they can go to contentmachine.com and they can find, you know, how they can come up with the content ideas there, right, Dan?
Yeah, so contentmachine.com/resources. I've got about 10 or 11 different frameworks that I use and have used at various times for various aspects of content marketing, particularly scaling content marketing. So becoming that entrepreneur, exiting yourself from the process, getting other people to do it for you. The idea spreadsheet's in there. There's the content multiplier. There's like guidelines for guest writers, and all kinds of stuff that they can grab. No email opt-in. You don't need to get the book to get it. It's just useful information. If you like it, then please let me know. Please use it.
Yeah, awesome. And I highly recommend people actually grab the book. I mean, there's a ton of content marketing books out there, but this is actually super actionable. I went through it quite quickly, over the weekend here when you send over a copy, and it's really, really actionable stuff. And I liked it. And, just stuff you can implement right away, pretty much. So that's the kind of content that's the kind of content I connect with myself. So.
Right. Well, my goal was to make it the most actionable content marketing book that's ever written. And I say that without ever actually reading a content marketing book. So I will never have any idea if it is, but it's nice that you told me it is actionable.
Yeah, well, I've read a ton of books, and I mean this one is for sure on my list. I spoke to my friend Jan about this too. I saw he interviewed you for his WP Summit. He said the same thing. So yeah. I guess it's cool. It's and a lot of people in your community. Have also a Facebook group. Link that up below the video here. So if people want to join there and have a conversations, they can do it. But I just wanted to cover a few more things. And specifically, you have a section in your book where you talk about scaling this and building the machine. So talk a little bit what you mean about that and how someone can, exit themselves from the process and, become the entrepreneur like you've done with your business.
Yeah, I think where people run into problems with this is, well, two things. One is the mindset. Like, people don't think it's important for them to do it, which is crazy to me, because I think, like, in the business world, it's completely accepted that you need to try and work on your business, not in your business. That's like a thing that every entrepreneur knows. Like, the first thing they need to be doing once they start making money is to get people to do the work so they can do the more strategic, creative work and the business can keep moving. But no one does it with content marketing. I have no idea why, and I want to change that. So I want people to be more entrepreneurial. I think when people try to do it, the problem they have is they scale the wrong thing. And they like we said before, if you haven't got to the point where you're creating great content that's getting shared regularly, that the audience really likes, then don't scale that, because you're just going to scale shit, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you get to the point where you're creating really good content, your audience loves it, and that's the time when you figure out, okay, so what are the sort of posts that we do? What's the type of content that will scale? How do we use these frameworks to make sure that anyone writing content on our site is going to be bang on? So like the guest writer, the author management ideas, Trello board, that kind of stuff that makes it easy to manage authors, hiring someone to come in and manage this for you, having a checklist at the end of a post that confirms, is this actually consistent with our vision and our values, in terms of, like, if one of your values is being actionable, like, is this post actually really actionable and useful? If not, don't put it out there, and go back to square one. So these are all processes that you can have that you don't need to be doing yourself and that other people can do if your content is done in a way that can scale. And that's the other thing is, if you're doing videos or you're doing podcasts or you're doing Periscope calls, all this stuff is cool, but it's very, very hard to scale. Writing is much more easy to scale. So I focus on writing, and that's what we do at WP Curve. It's the only content we do. And, everyone's telling you to do videos and all the rest of it, but I mean, writing to me is still, it's very easy to scale. It's very high value. People can use. It's very efficient for people to get through. It's very good for Google. It's got a lot of benefits. So it's definitely cool to experiment with new technologies, but keep in mind that if you're backing only one way of marketing, then you might be putting yourself into a corner where you're not going to be able to scale that down the track.
Yeah, and I mean, you now on WP Curve, you have a guest writer. So how do you find really good writers? For example, if I wanted to, someone interview me and I want to write a case study and I don't want to write it myself because I don't have time to do it, where would you find a really good writer that can, write almost as high quality as I can or you can for your own blog?
Well, I don't think you need a really good writer. I think the thing is with writing is, like, I'm not a very good writer. Like, I read books written by people who are really good writers, and I'm like, fire, how do they put these words together? Like, they're amazing. But my book sold tens of thousands of copies, and this new book, I'm sure, is going to sell thousands of copies as well. Not because I'm a good writer, just because I can perfect something that you can constantly edit. Like, you can have a guideline for how something should be written, and you can have a vision for the sort of content you want out there, and you can continually work on something and make it good. So, like, the first time I did this was with a blog post about starting a podcast. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm like, well, I'm going to write a blog post that is literally the best blog post in the world about starting a podcast. I'm going to make it as actionable as possible. I'm going to interview 10 entrepreneurs, ask for their advice that are doing podcasting. I'm going to tell you exactly the steps to follow to create your podcast. I'm going to do absolutely everything I possibly can to make this the best piece of content. Now, I wasn't a good writer. I just knew what my values were for that piece of content, and I set my expectations very high. And if you want other people to do the same thing for you, then you have to do exactly the same thing. You have to set your expectations extremely high. You need to tell them exactly what you expect. It needs to be written and documented. You need to reject things that don't meet the expectations. You need to work more with the people who are meeting the expectations. And I think you need to find people who are able to create something good, not necessarily people who are great writers. Quite often people don't enjoy writing from people who are great writers. Like, I know I've got friends who are great writers, and they've done content on our site, and we've got feedback from people that they didn't really like it that much because it wasn't that useful, it wasn't that actionable. It's just nice words. I can appreciate good writing, but good writing is not a necessary skill to have as a content marketer, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, I'm not even a native English speaker, and it worked out quite well for me, with just telling my story, obviously improving your writing, that's important, but you don't need to be like a Hemingway or something like this. You don't need to be, extremely good. But I just struggle sometimes. Where would you go and look for people to work for you? If you want to hire a writer, where would you go?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question. So again, a couple of things. First of all, you want to get to a point where you don't have to look. It's the same with the ideas. You don't want to get to a point. It's even the same with staff. Like, we often these days don't have to go out and look for staff because we've become relevant enough that staff look for us. The same with guest authors. The same with content ideas. The ideas come to us because we've become relevant enough, and guest writers come to us because we've become relevant enough, and they want to get on our platform. So the long game is become relevant enough so they come to you and you don't have to go to them. The short game is who's doing this well already? Do you have to pay them? So we do a couple of things. Sometimes we do pay people. We know a couple of people that do this well. We've seen them on other blogs. That's probably the easiest answer, is to go to other blogs, look for the style of content that is being produced, look for content that's gotten traction on those blogs if it's got a similar audience, and find those guest writers and ask them to write for you. We've done that. We've found great guest writers doing that. People reach out to us. We encourage people to do that. If they can meet the requirements, the very strict requirements, and that's good. And often people don't want to be paid. So a lot of the stuff on our site is free. There's a lot of sites that help you find writers. I'm more a proof person. Like, I want to see something that's gotten traction, that's working really well, that looks and feels exactly how we want. That's what I want to use to choose someone to create content on the site. So I prefer to go to other blogs and see what's working well. If you're going to go to a site and look for writers, that's going to be a slippery slope. There may be some good ones where it will work out. I'm not sure. We haven't had a lot of success with it, and it's not really a strategy we use.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I prefer if someone can give me an introduction, that's much easier. For example, I'm putting together some case studies now for a program I'm launching. And I actually had someone approach me. It was on my email list, and he wanted to, create, case studies for me because he likes my content. I was like, yeah, sure. Send over a draft and you can interview my student. That's fine. And and I know he's a really good writer as well. So kind of just happened to find me. And that's kind of what you're talking about, relevance and, doing something great. But, for you personally, like, what's the best way to really get the word out there or promoting? I mean, word of mouth, obviously, but what, do you use any sites to get the content out there, or is it social media, email list, or what's the best way to promote the content?
Yeah, so this is one of the frameworks I include in there. It's a pretty basic one. It's like, we don't do really heavy promotion, but we do a social media image. We do mention tweets. We schedule about 5 to 10 tweets about the piece of content over the course of a couple of weeks. We do click to tweets, which we'll put in the post, which are really effective. People can just click one button and send a tweet out. If there's influencers mentioned, we'll often email them and ask them to share it, or we'll mention them in a tweet, and the admin team can do that. Mm-hmm. We're not like super heavy promoters of our content. We have an email once a week that goes out to about 20,000 people, and that usually has our best piece of content in it, maybe a couple of pieces of content. So we reserve the good ones for that, the ones that we think are going to get traction. And then I'll mention them as well on my own personal social media, on my Instagram, Facebook. Sure. We get a fair bit of traction from that. We'll do basic SEO, so we'll get a bit of traction eventually from Google. I mean, Google are our biggest source of traffic. So eventually that works really well. It's not a very short-term thing to do.
Yeah.
But you can do so many things with content promotion. We used to be a bit more aggressive with it, but these days, like, we've got a pretty good community. If we put something out that's good, it will take off. And if we put something out that's not good, we don't want to promote it. Like I want the content that's good to rise to the top, and the content that doesn't hit the mark, which still does happen, we don't want to promote that. We want to promote the good stuff. So the community does that naturally and organically when you create something that they care about.
Yeah, for sure. And, you mentioned something there that's very interesting. Obviously, if you want to build an online brand or any kind of business, you have an email database of like 20,000 people. What would you say was really the key to growing this? Obviously, creating high quality content that people would like to share, but some strategies there that helped you grow so quickly.
Well, we didn't really grow quickly. I mean, we're a company that's 40 people. We're 2 years old. When I started the business, I had 4,000 people on my email list. We're getting 60 to 70,000 visits to the site each month. We're making, I think, 70 grand US a month. Like, we're a decent sized business, so we should have a decent sized list, and it hasn't really grown that quickly. I'm not aggressive at all with our email opt-ins. We barely even have email opt-ins on the site. We don't have any kind of pop-ups or anything. My philosophy is that we give away useful things, and most of the time we ask for an email when we do that. It's normally an add-on for a piece of content. So before I mentioned the guest writing article, the add-on will be all of our frameworks for managing guest writers. And you have to put your email in to get that. Sometimes we just give it away, but sometimes you have to put your email in. That's about all we do. We don't do a whole lot more of that. We've got a bit of email automation in terms of like email courses and things like that. But we're not that aggressive with it. I'm not that bullish on email, to be honest. I mean, I know it's important, but I also think that it's becoming less and less relevant. And I think, like, being relevant is not a matter of conversions. It's like, if we become a relevant brand that people care about, they'll talk about us where they want to talk about us. And they'll talk about us on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter and on Periscope and at events, in person, on email, everywhere. And that's my goal, is to make our brand relevant. And building a massive email list is not like a huge priority for me.
Yeah, and it's completely. I love what you're saying here, and you don't really need the biggest email list in the world if you have really high engagement and a high level of trust. And it seems like that because you have thousands of customers and you have a list of 20,000. So if you compare that, there's some people, they have a list of 100,000. They could just dream of having that many customers in your business. So it's like, really what you're doing here really works. So just to keep that in mind.
Let's just go stale. Like we had, when I started, I had like, a couple of thousand or probably less than that on my email list, and I'd get about the same sort of interaction that we get now on our email list. Like, it's not, I think people just join, they kind of forget about it. The emails just kind of disappear. Like, a lot of them don't get read. It's just a platform that's, I think, is just, it's just not as, to me, it's not as relevant as it used to be. Like, me personally, and I know this pisses off marketers when I say this, because I know, like, people buy on email and all of that stuff. So it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's not as relevant as it was, and it's going to be less relevant. Like, my kids don't even know what email is. They know what Periscope is. They know what YouTube is. They've been using YouTube since they were 2 years old. They know what Instagram is. They know what Facebook is. They don't know what email is. They don't know what fax machines are. And I think it's like me, none of our team members have email except for the founders and Kyle, I think, out of 40 plus people, because the team don't need email. None of my friends send me emails. I don't use email for friends or family communication anymore. Like, this is what we used to use for all of this stuff. We used to use email to contact people at work. Like, who does that anymore? Or contact your friends. Like, I don't do that anymore. Young people definitely don't do that anymore. So my argument is it's becoming less relevant, not irrelevant, but definitely less relevant. And I think if you purely focus on building an email list, I think you'd be better off increasing an email list is definitely a good thing to do, but I think you'd be better off focusing on how do you become a more relevant brand across a whole bunch of different platforms, rather than like how big is my list.
Right, and it's a very interesting thought there, because I'm following Ramit Sethi, and he's like, focus on the list, but it's not about how big the list is. So you're completely right there. So don't focus on building 100,000 person email list and you have like not much engagement. That will not build your business. So really being relevant, I think that's a really, having a relevant brand. And something I wanted to talk to before we end this conversation is
I want to pull you up for a second first.
Okay.
I want to pull you up because I think a mistake people make is they choose one person to focus on as like their kind of guru. And I'm not saying Ramit's not a smart dude. In fact, I don't know anything about him or what he's put out. So I don't know what his thing is. But I know, like, if you get in that world where you're a blogger and you only focus on what bloggers are doing, that's going to end badly for you. If you get in the world where you're an internet marketer and you only focus on what internet marketers are doing, that's going to end badly for you as well, because the best businesses in the world are not bloggers and they're not internet marketers. Yeah. So to me, like, you need to get inspiration from a whole bunch of different worlds. And I look to the startup world a lot when it comes to business stuff. Like, I look at what the top brands, Airbnb and Uber and Slack and companies like that, like companies that are getting billion-dollar valuations that no internet marketer would ever dream possible. What are those companies doing? Because they're becoming relevant to millions and millions of people. Right. How can I get inspiration from those? And then I go to the internet marketers and look for advice about how do I improve my website, or if I want to build my email list, how do I improve my email list, or if I want to use Periscope, how do I use Periscope? And then I go to the blogging crowd and learn about how to create better blog posts. And then I go to the design crowd to learn about how to design my site better. You don't want to just go to the one place to get all of your information, because you're going to end up with a really skewed version of reality.
Yeah, and that's the reason I like, for me, when I started out, I interviewed the various of people. So I learned from, different kind of entrepreneurs in the online space, authors, and, I love to interview startups too, like yourself. But also what you've done really well, you built, a personal brand. Now you're an author. You're not just having, a great business, but you're also building, a career as a speaker and so on. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Was it always intentional that you wanted to have, a personal brand as well?
Not really. I'm not, well, yeah, I'm not building a career as a speaker. I definitely don't want to do a speaker as a job. I don't want to get paid to do it. I think it would be a really shitty business. But it's just an amazing thing to do. I can't deny it. Like, it's, I want to just sit around and write blog posts, but you just don't have the impact that you have in person. Like, it's insane. Yesterday, I spoke at an event, a digital summit in Brisbane, and like, my Twitter just exploded. I got 115 new followers in about 2 hours. There was pages and pages of tweets. Like, I couldn't keep up with it. I got home last night and I had 50 notifications on Facebook. I had loads on Periscope, loads on Instagram, and just pages and pages of tweets. All just and I've only looked at the ones where they mention me, my handle specifically. I haven't looked at the hashtag for the event. There's only 350, 400 people there.
No.
So to have that kind of impact, like from a 30-minute presentation in front of 350 people, is just mind-blowing. Like, people come up to you and just say, like, this is the best presentation I've ever seen. Like, the first presentation I gave, which I was so nervous about, I thought it was going to be so shit. I was like literally thinking of leaving before I gave it. A lady came up to me afterwards and said, like, you've literally changed my life. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that never happens when writing a blog post. So I don't know. I don't know why I do the speaking, because it stresses me out like you wouldn't believe. But the level of authority you get is amazing from it, and the impact you get is undeniable. The books just kind of came by accident. It was a WP Curve project originally, and then it just ballooned into its own thing, the 7-Day Startup, and then I just decided to write another one because I had so much fun doing the first one.
Yeah, right.
And they just sort of ballooned into their own brands.
Yeah, and both came up. The first one, it was not too long ago that book came out, and now obviously Content Machine is coming out August 10. If you're watching this, definitely pick up a copy. Go to contentmachine.com and you can get all the information there, and it's on Amazon. And is it just on Amazon they can grab it, right?
Just on Amazon, yeah.
And are you gonna have some kind of promotion, when it's coming out, or what's the deal there for the audience tuning in?
Yeah, so on the 10th of August, it'll be free for 3 days. So 10th to the 13th, it'll be free. So you can get it on Amazon for free. After that, it won't be very much money. Like, the current book's like $4 or something for the Kindle, and like $12 for the paperback book. So yeah, get it in the first 3 days if you want. Like, the idea of doing the first 3 days is to try and encourage more people to get it, and hopefully get people to leave reviews on Amazon. So I'm really hoping the people in the group do that to help us get the rankings. And then I'm hoping it takes off like the last one. But I mean, I never know what's going to happen. But yeah, it'll be free for those first 3 days, and then a few dollars after that. And then contentmachine.com, I've got a paid community on there. So if you like what we do, then you can join that community, join other entrepreneurs who are doing the same thing. And even if you don't want to do that, there's a free Facebook group, and there's a whole bunch of resources up on contentmachine.com as well that are open and free for you to use.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely go check that out. And, before we say goodbye here, some, okay, obviously they can go pick up the book, but, some actionable steps that people can get started right now. What would you recommend people do, and take their content marketing to the next level, pretty much?
Well, I think it depends on where they're at. I think they need to view what they're doing as an extremely high value activity that is entrepreneurial and creative in nature, not a procedural blogging type exercise. Change the way you think about it is the best thing you can do, no matter what stage you're at. If you feel, be honest with yourself, and if you feel that if you're not creating content that people really care about, if people aren't telling you they really need more, they really action what you're doing, if they're not really sharing what you're putting out, then it's probably not good enough. So you need to focus on the quality of your content, how good your business is, the link between the two, and get to that point before you worry about anything else. Focus on the relevant, the quality, and how it's different from what else is out there. Do you have a vision for it? All those fundamentals before you're focusing on scaling it and building that into a machine that runs without you. If you've got to that point, then it's time to scale it and become an entrepreneur and get someone else to help you with some of this content so you can be more creative and you can do other entrepreneurial things.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've seen you a lot lately as well. You're doing the Periscope thing. It seems like it's really booming up. So where do you see this going? Seems like it's a lot of people tuning in. Like Derek Halpern jumped on it, and he just sent out an email today about it. It was like 600 people live, 800 live. It's like insane, because you don't get that on a live webinar. Usually you're promoting your product or whatever you're selling. So
no,
Periscope
it's insane. I wouldn't be comparing it to anything else that you know already. I think people are already making that mistake where they're putting videos on there and they're trying to repurpose them, because that's what you do when you create a video, and they're treating it like a webinar and they're trying to sell, and it's a whole new platform that no one really understands yet. I mean, all we do know is that it's extremely addictive. It takes up a lot of your time if you're a participant, because it's so engaging. It's fun and delightful to use, and that cannot be said about webinars or any other technology that is anything related to a webinar. So I think if you're thinking about it, get on there, test it, see if you're getting any traction. Don't expect 600 people to come on straight away. If you've got a massive audience and a massive platform, then that's the kind of results you'll get. But you will get a lot more growth on this platform if you're doing it reasonably well than you will on others, because this thing is just exploding. Like I bet you on this call I've already got more followers. That's so that's like I'm literally getting Periscope followers all the time, or new people periscoping all the time. Like it's taking over my fucking phone. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of a million different platforms that are coming out. Right. So many people are using Snapchat as well. Other people are using Meerkat. There's things coming out all the time. Instagram is massive. Like there's people who are just building massive multi-million-dollar businesses just on Instagram. I know people who get paid just to put photos on Instagram. Like what's happening now is just insane. There's so many opportunities. But the one thing that's common across all of it is that the people who are doing well really understand that platform. They really understand how to create something good for a community on whatever platform they're doing it on. It's not about how much you put out. Quality trumps quantity. You need to get good at doing whatever you are doing on the platform that your community is using, and that's the way people do this stuff well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna for sure jump on the Periscope thing. I think it would work really well for what I'm doing here. You know, I'm in Cancun. I can just Periscope, and it seems like super fun. I just haven't had time to get on this yet. But you know, thanks so much, Dan, for coming on here. Where's the best way to connect more with you? Obviously, contentmachine.com. If they want to go grab the book, they can do it there. But any other ways you would like to connect with people?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is @TheDanNorris, THE Dan Norris. So you can follow me on there. Same as Instagram, same as Periscope. They're probably the three I use the most, other than Facebook. Facebook, I guess, just put in Dan Norris, and I'm in there. I've got Facebook groups, put in Content Machine or 7-Day Startups, and you can join those groups. I'm reopening it today, actually. I've had it closed for a week because I've been launching a private community, and I've given those group members a discount. So if you're in that group, you often get benefits like that. Like they get a big discount to join this. But I've got over 200 people waiting to get into that group. So that group's been amazing. So that's definitely a cool place to go if you want to hang out and learn more.
Yeah, awesome. I'll link up all the things we mentioned here below the video. So thanks so much, Dan, for coming on here. I had a really good time. You shared some awesome stuff, for actionable stuff as well to my audience.